Morning, page 188. That same night, Kolya was riding on toward Omsk. He avoided the traffic, and whenever he saw headlights, rode into the steppe and lay down. Then, in some lovely homestead, he squeezed into a hen house, gratified the urge which had haunted him all of his time when he was on the run, by wringing the necks of 3 hens and tucking them in his sack. That's so funny. I knew that's what he was going to do. Sorry. The others started squawking, so he hurried away. The irresolution which had made us so unsteady after our first mistakes tightened its hold on Kolya now that I was captured. Easily swayed and impressionable, he was fleeing now in desperation, unable to think clearly what to do next. He was incapable of realizing the most obvious of facts, that the disappearance of the bicycle and the gun would of course been discovered by now, so that they no longer camouflaged him, and he ought to throw them away first thing in the morning as too conspicuous, and also that he should not approach Omsk from that side and by the highway, but after a wide detour by wasteland and by back ways. The gun and the bicycle should be sold quickly. He would have the money he needed. But he sat for half a day in the bushes near Irtish. Then he yet again lost patience before nightfall and set off by foot along the river. Very probably his description had already been broadcast at a local radio station. They have fewer inhibitions about this in Siberia than in the European part of the country. He rode up to a little house and went in. Instead, inside were an old woman and her 30-year-old daughter. There was also a radio. By an extraordinary coincidence, a voice was singing. From Sakhalin, a convict fleeing by narrow tracks and hidden trails. Kolya went to pieces and began shedding tears. "What are you so unhappy about?" the woman asked. There simply caused Kolya to weep unashamedly. They began comforting him. "I'm all alone, abandoned by everybody," he explained. "Get married then," the old woman said, whether in jest or in earnest. "My girl's single too." Kolya, more maudlin than ever, started taking peeps at the would-be bride. She gave the matter a business-like twist. "Got any money for vodka?" Kolya dug out his last few rubles, but there wasn't enough. "Never mind, I'll give you more later." She went off. Oh yes, Kolya remembered. I'd shot some partridges. Cooked the marriage feast, mother-in-law. The old woman took them. "Hey, these are hens." "So it was dark when I shot them. Couldn't tell the difference." "Yes, but why have their necks been wrung?" Kolya asked for a smoke, and the old woman asked her daughter's suitor for money in return for some mahorka. Kolya took his cap off, and the old woman became agitated. "You're a convict, aren't you, with your head shaven like that? Go away while you're safe, or else when my daughter comes back, we'll turn you in." All the time, the thought was going round and round in Kolya's head. Why did we take pity on free people there on the Irtish, when free people have no pity for us? He took a Moscow jacket down from the wall. It was getting cold out of doors, and he was wearing only a suit, and put it on just his size. The old woman yelled, "I'll hand you over to the militia." But Kolya looked through the window and saw the daughter approaching with someone on a bicycle. She had already informed on him. Only one thing, for Makhmadira, he seized the gun. "Into the corner, lie down," he said to the old woman. He stood against the wall, let the other two come through the door, and ordered them to lie down. To the man he said, "And you give me your shoes for a wedding present. Take them off one at a time." With the gun trained on him, the man took them off and Kolya put them on, throwing away his worn-out camp shoes, and threatened that he would wing anyone who followed him out. Off he rode, but the other man dashed after him on his own bicycle. Kolya dismounted and put the gun to his shoulder. "Stop, leave the bike there. Get away from it." He drove the man away, went over to the bike, broke its spoke, slit a tire with the knife, and rode on. Soon he came out onto the highway. Omsk was ahead, so he just rode straight on. There was a bus stop. Women were digging potatoes in their gardens. A motorcycle carrying 3 workmen in jerkins tagged him. It drove on steadily for some time. Then suddenly went straight for Kolya so that the sidecar struck him and knocked him off. They all jumped off, piled on top of Zhdanik, and hit him in the head with a pistol. The women in the vegetable garden shrieked, "What are you doing that for? What's he done to you?" What indeed had he done to them? But who has done and will yet do what to whom is beyond that understanding of the common people, beyond the understanding? Under the jerkins, all 3 turned out to be wearing their uniforms. The operations group had been on duty round the clock, day after day at the entrance to the city. The woman got their answer. "He's a murderer." That was the simplest thing to say, and the women, trusting the law, went back to digging potatoes. The first thing the operations group did was ask the penniless runaway if he had any money. Kolya said quite honestly that he hadn't. They started searching him, and in one pocket of his new Moscow jacket found 50 rubles. They confiscated it, drove to an eating house, and spent the lot on food and drink. They did, however, feed Kolya too. So we came to anchor in jail for a long time. We were not tried until July of the following year. For 9 months we festered in the disciplinary barracks, except when we were dragged out occasionally for interrogation. This was conducted by Chief Prison Officer Matshakovsky and Senior Lieutenant Weinstein. What the interrogators wanted to know was which prisoners had helped us, who among that civilian personnel had conspired with us to switch off the lights at the moment of our escape. We didn't, of course, explain that our plan had been quite different, and that the lights going out had only been a hindrance to us. Where was our rendezvous in Omsk? Which frontier were we intending to cross eventually? They found it incredible that people might want to stay in their native land. We were running away to Moscow to the Central Committee to tell them about illegal arrests, and that's all there is to it. They didn't believe us. Having failed to get anything interesting out of us, they pinned on us the usual escapers' posy, 5814, Article 5814, counter-revolutionary sabotage, Article 59.3, banditry, the 4/6 decree, Article 1.2, robbery carried out by a gang, same decree, Article 1.2, armed robbery with violence, endangering life, Article 182, making and carrying an offensive weapon other than a firearm. But this daunting array of charges threatened us with chains no heavier than those we wore. The penal practice of the courts had long exceeded all the reasonable bounds. On these charges promised nothing worse than 25 years, which a Baptist could be given for saying his prayers, and which we were serving before we tried to escape. The only difference now was that when the roll call was called, we should have to say end of a sentence 1975 instead of 1973. Hardly a palpable difference for us in 1951. Only once did the interrogation take a menacing turn, when they promised to try us as economic disruptors. The innocent word was more dangerous than the hackneyed saboteur, bandit, robber, thief. This word opened up the possibility of capital punishment, which had been introduced about a year before. We were disruptors because we had brought disorder into the economy of the People's State. As the interrogators explained it, 102,000 rubles had been spent on our recapture. Some work sites had been at standstill for several days. The prisoners were not marched out to work because guards had all been called out to join in the hunt. 23 vehicles had carried soldiers day and night about the steppe and had spent their annual allotment of petrol in 3 weeks. Operations groups had been dispatched to all neighboring towns and settlements. A nationwide search had been ordered. 400 pictures of myself and 400 of Kolya distributed through the country. We listened to this inventory with pride. Well, they sentenced us to 25 each. When the reader picks up this book, our sentences will probably still not be at an end. Well, they are, but perhaps not the sentence of Russia. Another consequence of Tenno's escape was that the concert party and the CES was disbanded for a year on account of the ill-starred sketch. Because culture is a good thing, but culture must serve oppression, not freedom. That was short. Thank you for listening.